got to the point where the gold silver ratio was up at 106. It's now fallen down. It went down to about 90. It's about 93 at the moment. I think that's going to go a whole load lower because people who've missed the boat in gold are going to say, well, silver hasn't gone up that much. We ought to get into that because look at the gold silver ratio. It is still far too high. So that's, I think, roughly where we are. It's actually a very good outlook for the price of silver. And it's a turbocharged way, if you like, of getting out of credit, getting out of fiat currencies.
Yeah, great insights. Michael, your thoughts on the recent price action in silver and what you're seeing from a technical perspective with the metal?
Well, yeah, Alistair just gave some good background stuff about, rationale for why it should come up out of here now because of these events going on. And I try to blindfold myself to these things because I don't know how to time them, but they are there. We know it. And you can't alter reality forever. Ultimately reality wins. And so if something's been held back for too long, it's likely that when it unleashes, it'll unleash even more than if it had been let to do it before. But the technicals are what we're looking at. And I don't just mean price. We look at long-term momentum of silver and gold. And we measure price in relation to like 3-year averages, 3-quarter averages, and so forth, not just day-to-day or week-to-week stuff, the noise. And when we measure it, we create an oscillator and it creates a different visual picture than when you look at a price chart. It develops its own trends. Sometimes they aren't even evident on price yet. Well, we just broke out a week ago. Silver had made, remember, over the last year, the high in silver last May was 32.70. Okay. You could draw a line sideways through a year of up, down action with 2 peaks after then at 35 and 35, where you could draw a line through that ink and it oscillated either side of that price level, going nowhere. It had a sharp drop, like in early April, it had a real sharp drop. It immediately recovered, but it basically just lived in a zone. When we looked at momentum of that price action, we didn't get this erratic up-down action. We had a perfect tube of action. You could define, if you saw the momentum chart, which is in our weekend reports, it's like a perfect channel. Last Friday, when we closed up got up in the upper 34s again, not even getting back to the $235 peaks, it broke out of a whole year of perfection of a channel, meaning it's going to unleash itself now. There was a period back in 2010 when a very similar thing happened technically, where you could find a spot and it oscillated noisily sideways for a year and you didn't know what's going on. And momentum developed a structure, a downtrending structure of correction. And when it broke through, silver exploded over the next handful of months. My assessment is not just because of that historic parallel, but because of other factors I see in play right now, technical factors, that in the next 3 to 5 months, we're highly likely to see silver well above 50. Once we get this up, I think the first surge is not even going to acknowledge the old dual highs at 50, which really were phantom events. In other words, we were up there for so brief a time, it was like gaseous. It wasn't even really getting up there. And as you said, in real dollar terms, real value, $50 don't mean anything. We have to go to about 200 right now to match those peaks in real dollar terms. But I think we're about to launch, this month being the initial launch month, for the next 3 to 5 months. And then you may get a pause, and then I think there's more after that even. But I'm focused right now just on this jolt that I think we're about to have. And I think it's going to blast out the old 50 highs. And that's, of course, when what? You're going to get all the public, which has ignored this beast the whole time, denied the reality that was under their feet, that with monetary metals rising, beating the S&P, by the way. Certainly gold. Even the gold miners, by the way, have beat the S&P since 2015, if you measure it properly. But I think we're about to launch. And I think in the next 3 to 5 months, you'll see a different reality than what we've seen in many years.
Yeah, and this echoes some sentiments. I was talking to Ed Steer recently, and he was explaining silver as a kind of slowly and then all at once, similar to Hemingway's description of how do you go broke, how do you go bankrupt, and I think that all at once is coming as you're laying out there. I want to talk about gold for a moment because it's been in a consolidation pattern since hitting all-time highs of around 3,440 on May 25th. We are inching higher here and there, but we have not yet seen any major moves to the upside. We're about $3,384 as we speak at this point in time. What could cause the next breakout, and how high could gold go in your view, Alistair?
Well, the way I look at it is not so much how high it can go, but how low the dollar can go. And in that, because really, it's not gold going up so much. I mean, obviously, gold has a volatility of its own, but it's actually quite low. But most of the move is actually due to expectations of lower currencies in terms of their purchasing power. That's something which is really driven by foreign interest. Now, for some time, we have seen the People's Bank of China buying gold. But they're not really buying gold. What they're doing is they're dumping dollars. And I think if you understand that distinction, then you actually get the story. That's the whole point about what gold is doing at the moment. Now, we had a very interesting moment when I think it was just after Liberation Day, when we saw the dollar fall and bond yields rise. Now, I mean, this, as far as market participants are concerned, shouldn't happen. If you get rising bond yields, you would expect to see the dollar rising. But what it was foreigners dumping US investments and dumping the dollar. And that was the key to it. Now, we've got a pause in that situation. And the pause, I suppose, is understandable given that Trump is backing off on tariffs. How much, we really don't know. He seems to have come to some arrangement with China, but we don't actually know what it is. But it looks like China's, if you like, control of rare earths has upset Trump's plans. But there is another thing in this, and that is that Trump is a spendthrift. He wants to cut taxes. He wants to eliminate income tax, indeed.